loaded in. If we have people start coming into the stream, we'll start addressing their questions. They'll be in the stream chat. I'm specifically looking at the stream chat to make sure that I'm catching any questions that come through there. So that's not anything that you necessarily need to worry about, Koji. But it is active on twitch.tv/cdoggydog. And it's also just instantly linked through announcements. So you can find it there. So yeah, welcome to our Monday Leadership Seminar. This is the fifth one of these. Today I have a wonderful guest with me. Koji, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, I'm Koji.
Great, fantastic. Thanks, Koji.
You're
So
welcome.
this is the fifth one because of 2 through 4's internet problems and other things. They haven't gone up as VODs, so sorry about that, Joey. But this one will be going up as a VOD, and basically we're trying out a new format. We tried it out last week. It worked pretty well. And it's basically just a Q&A with you, the people, about the issues that you're facing in the academic esports world, or just in general that you have some questions about that we can help you with. So first things first, I'm going to kind of open up the floor to the mentees that are in the Discord server right now. Do y'all have anything specifically right now that you're dealing with that you would like some advice with, or just some help? God damn. I stumped you this quickly, huh?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. So now, this instead of a Q&A, we're going to start taking topics from the topic suggestion chat, starting from the top down of things that we haven't talked about yet. One of the ones that I see here that I wanted to talk with you, Koji, is job hunting in the esports industry.
Oh boy, job hunting, sweet. Love it.
I know. This is actually one of Koji's favorite things to do. Not only the job hunting part, but hunting the job posters for posting volunteer things when he thinks that they deserve to be paid. Talk a
Yeah, I
little
don't.
bit.
Yeah. So, oh, sorry, I just interrupted you. My bad.
No, you're
But
good.
yeah. So I'm not. I'm a prime advocate for you should be paid for the work that you put forward, and I don't believe in volunteer positions. So if your organization is not ready for to expand or grow, um, you know, you should not be using volunteers to facilitate that.
Mm.
Now, if you are ready to expand and grow, that means that you're taking an income and all that, and so you're able to pay people. That's just how I see things. Um, there are instances where volunteers are okay, but you still need to compensate your volunteers and not just provide them access and a good reference at the end of their term with you. And I think that's bullshit. So be careful about volunteer positions. It's a good way to get your foot in for sure, but make sure that when you're in a volunteer position that you're connecting with people, because otherwise you're just wasting your time. So and we'll get more into how to connect with people as we get further into the discussion.
All right. Well, speaking on that, I've created a beautiful Venn diagram because I am recently of the position that volunteer positions have some really good things to them for people right now. And I think that overall, volunteer positions, while they're generally not beneficial for people who do have a lot of experience in the esports scene, it is one of the only opportunities for those without much experience in the esports scene to learn and have some people who are professionals kind of take them under their wing and build them up into someone that's useful. So I'm going to say under the good that it builds. Let's see if I can get this a little bit smaller because this is pretty big. 8. No, it didn't like that. Okay. We'll just, there you go. Build, oh, Jesus Christ, no, that's too small.
You'll never get it perfect.
Yeah, that's my life. Okay. Builds crucial skills in a hard to train for industry is one of the good pieces that I would argue for. What do you think about that, Koji?
Sure. So exposure to the environment will help you build the soft skills that you'll need to survive within the industry. That's one of the good things I can cover. Sure.
And then a bad thing, which you talked about, is it takes advantage of what's non-savvy gamer types. There you go. How does that sound?
Maybe not non-savvy gamer types, but people who just aren't aware of their own value.
Mm-hmm. Not, I'd say that they're not savvy about their value.
A lot of people aren't. So, and it used to be a common practice in the past, but esports has been really good about nipping things in its own butt
mm-hmm.
before it gets out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Except for Riot Games, but
Yikes.
but yeah, it's now more of a thing to where you'll find in esports organizations they'll pay you if they can, but if they can't, they'll usually be upfront about it and what they expect from you, and you can decide whether or not you want to proceed. Most people tend to go, yeah, you know what, I need to get my foot in the door. Let's go ahead and do this. But then they fall into the trap of saying yes all the time because they're volunteers. Right.
Yeah. So, sucks away time for little value. There we go. I'd say, and that's absolutely true. I think we've, a lot of us who have worked in the scene have had a lot of those situations where you're just sitting in a mind-numbing position, like putting chairs together for a few hours where you're not really learning anything and you're just kind of stuck being manual labor, and that's that's no fun, and it's also not a very good volunteer position. So
yeah, that and doing the grunt work for their guerrilla marketing campaign, getting leads while
well,
people wait in line.
I would step back and say that that's actually a valuable volunteer position for someone to do, because that type of interpersonal communication and marketing, especially if you're aspiring to like get into esports marketing, is still very relevant and crucial in day-to-day operations. And if you don't know how to do it, even as someone like higher up in terms of marketing for your initiatives, you're going to struggle. I think that that's something that's really crucial. So what do you think?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, and for people who aren't experienced, I could see that how that would be great for training purposes and developing their own, methods and styles, or just learning in the field. For someone like me to be put in that position, I mean, I killed it, but I didn't need to be there. Somebody else, I could have been teaching somebody else, and bring somebody else up in the scene.
I put up in terms of good that it gives you easy networking connections and exposure. Ooh, paid in exposure. You're not actually
Oh
volunteering.
God,
You're
yeah.
being paid in a full helping of exposure. But no, I think that really what you're getting from a position like this is someone that's 100% invested in your success and is going to kind of mentor you that specific in that specific space to get you up to snuff to become a full-time employee. The problem right now though is that not all volunteer positions are like that, and a lot of volunteer positions that exist within the esports space end up being like, by the way, we need someone to do this. It doesn't matter if it's done poorly, it just needs to be done. And that doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help the company setting up the volunteer positions, and it doesn't help the person filling it. So, overall, there's really no good case there. So, we're getting a question from Joey here, talking about where to go because he's gotten his face around the Arlington Esports Arena, for example, but he hasn't gotten very far in making a job happen. So he's asking where is someone to go with a lot of technical experience from working in technical theater world for 6 years, and can that benefit? Is technical theater actually relevant to esports? Because he wants to get into event management. So I'm gonna start off here and say that technical theater absolutely is a good jumping in point to being able to do event management if you're doing something on a production scale. But I also don't think that it's necessary or crucial. Like someone without technical theater experience would be able to do a lot of the pieces of like early events management just because it's really not that complex. What do you think, Koji?
So for technical theater, it's like a lot of events will contract out.
Mm-hmm.
So what you want to do is you don't want to target specific, say, venues or anything like that. You want to target production companies
Yeah.
and go that route instead. So like let's say Esports Stadium Arlington. It's not people who manage the lighting and all that. They're not employed by the city of Arlington. They're not employed by directly by the Esports Stadium. They're actually contracted out through a third party, or they are a third party that comes in and does the work for the event. So if you really want to go that route and get some experience behind it, talk to or talk to concert halls, um, or if you're really wanting to get your hands and feet dirty, there's a company that works with AT&T Stadium um, that also does a number of contracts all throughout DFW, and if that's where you want to get experience and get your industry connections through that field, I mean that's a good place to start. So just think about that. Again, avoid tunnel visioning on the esports stadium brand or
Yes. What?
the league
Oh, thank
championship
you.
series brand. Look for the
Yes.
production companies
Yes, thank
behind
you.
those brands or partnering with those brands instead.
What's the name of the production company you have in mind that works with AT&T Stadium?
I can't think of it right off the top of my head. I'd have to do some research. But I used to do security there, and we'd have to badge them in all the time. So I knew that they were separate from the stadium.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Koji. Sorry, I was muted there for a second. Um, the other thing I'm going to shill back to academic esports is, the university that you're going to is likely to have a esports organization there. Obviously, I know you, so I know that there's an esports organization there. And being able to either work with the people that are in charge of putting events or becoming that person that's in charge of events and kind of learning as you go and really being able to see things through from the top to bottom and making sure that you have the numbers to back up or like the ways basically to track the numbers from your events afterward so you can like show that off later on a resume or something like that is going to be crucial when it comes down to like being hired at larger firms like this. What they want to see is like hard experience, and especially for something like this, if you want to go into like event management and esports overall, like being able to have that top down view is like crucial. I don't know very many like full esports event management teams except for like the real big ones that end up doing their own expos and cons. So I don't know. How do you feel about that, Koji?
Um, so you're all over the place there. So.
Yeah, no, no. So the idea is what he should be doing if he's looking to get more experience in event management is look at his local group and take initiative there and start building up events himself. Or working with the organization to build up events and make sure that he's tracking statistics for the event or has that built into the event plan to be tracking the statistics so that you can use those later when you're applying to jobs elsewhere.
Right. So, okay. So whenever you build a resume, you want to put down what your actual experience is and how many years of experience you have in that. Within the technical field, within a technical field, it helps to have a kind of portfolio. So that you can illustrate what skills you actually do have and how you've applied them. So I'm not sure how I would look for a technical theater person, but I would imagine you would list, what productions you're in, and then what piece of the production you're a part of. Whether you're the, I really don't know what positions there are in technical theater. So, but if you understand what I'm saying, give me a thumbs up in the chat or whatever. But if not, get me to elaborate, please, because this is important because you're looking for career advice and this is your future. So I want to impress upon you that we're giving you the feedback that you are looking for, and I don't want you to just walk away empty-handed. Now, sorry, I was looking for the actual production company that was doing the AT&T Stadium work, so I kind of missed half of what you said there, Christian. But yeah. So if you want, you can send me your resume, and I can take a look at it. And I could probably pass it along to some people who are in the who do stage management and stage production and all that.
Yep.
And see what they think.
Additionally, you can do that through document share on the Discord, the Academic Esports Chats Discord. And I know all of the mentors that are actually here check everything that ends up coming through there. So if you want to post that and get it viewed and passed around by multiple people, it's a really good place to do that. Alrighty, so I know Joey is in an Overwatch scrimmage right now, so he might not be able to reply instantly. But I think that that's a good jumping off point, specifically for that topic of trying to find a job in the space. What it comes down to is get experience right now, because the degrees or the what is it called, the certificates, unless they're backed by a team or by an industry partner, a business or something like that, there's really not very much chance that they're going to care about it. And even if like you have a degree backed by Optic, it's not sure that TL is going to care about that. So right now I still think that the traditional way is to get a traditional degree, and on the side make sure that you're looking to get as much volunteer experience or work experience that you can, doing your preferred piece in esports. Something to note is that esports is still really young, which means that everything or most positions are still jack of all trades positions where you'll be doing things other than your job. So if the job that you end up getting isn't exactly what you want to do, never fear, because chances are the job that you do want to do at the company needs hands as well, so you can do that too. Let's see. Joey says he really enjoys the backstage settings, so being like a stage manager for events and such is what he's really interested in. Is there really a stage manager job besides like an executive producer for these events? Because as far as I
Um,
see, it's generally like the person that's
well,
orchestrating the event up
yeah,
high.
you have a producer who's like the executive over the entire production, but then you also have managers below them who worry about the cameras, who worry about the lighting, so or who worry about props on the stage or how the stage is constructed and all that. So whenever, especially during live productions, uh, the whole it's all hands on deck. So whatever needs to happen has to happen right away, and it's going to take more than just a producer and a handful of guys to make things quick and on the fly. Um,
Now, at what
so
level of
yeah.
event are we talking about there? Are we talking about an LCS level, or like the Faceit event that was at ESA, or something smaller than that? Even would have something like that.
Even just a small Smash tournament. So it pays to have structure and within your chain of command and all that. And it pays to know who's responsible for what, right? And then those people should be aware, like if somebody's sandbagging on their job, it's their job to pick up the slack should anything happen.
So Alethea actually popped in and said that anime cons are actually a good place to get volunteer experience with stage managers and things like that as well, because they'll typically have one. But yeah, something about that position actually, TO ends up fitting a lot of those boxes that you're talking about as well, in my experience, especially with like FGC or Smash events.
So what is TO?
Tournament organizer.
Gotcha. Okay.
So TO
That'd be
ends
a
up being the
POG.
person. TO ends up being the person that's navigating who's going to be on mainstream and when all the matches are taking place, etc. So who the commentators are, that's their job to coordinate all that.
Sounds like a jack of all trades.
Yep, that's esports, isn't it?
Hey, we're on brand. All right.
All right. I think, is there anything else in terms of job hunting in the esports industry that you'd like to talk about?
Man, we barely scratched the surface. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we kind of touch on what people we'll touch on a topic, get some questions, and then kind of push forward. But we can go even more in depth. I'm down for that.
Sure. Let's move on to another topic. If that's all to you.
All right. I think the next thing that I want to go to, because this can never be talked about enough, is selling questionable games to school boards like CSGO and Rainbow Six. I just recently talked to a large university and their student life department about building a 6 to 7 figure esports program at their school. And one of the first things they said to me was about censoring questionable games. They're not a religious university. They're a regular public school. That's how deep this problem
and
is.
we have school shootings in America.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So yeah, it's not really religious. It's more about the perception to the public because they are a public university and they're beholden to that.
Mm-hmm. So here's the question: is Koji? I've been pretty outspoken on this, but how would you sell CS:GO or Rainbow Six Siege to the school, if at all?
If I was selling this to a school, I'd get really academic and show them some statistics on several studies and about violent video games and their correlation with violent crime, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm sorry, but what is it? CS:GO doesn't really have a good track record because there was a shooting between two rival clans at a small event. And you know how the internet is; it never forgets. So
Yeah.
Joe Blow could just pull that article up from like 2010, and then he's like, "See, they're violent. They do violence." But it only takes one person to ruin it for everybody. So if schools want to avoid certain games, that's really their decision. And at the end of the day, it's all about the bottom line, correct?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then you look at the attendance numbers for certain events for these games, and the player numbers for these games in the competitive scene. If you can get of course, you want to get the pro level numbers, but I say dig deeper, get the semi pro numbers, get the amateur tournament numbers as well,
Mm-hmm.
and really show the interest in these events and or in these games and see their rate of growth year to year because they keep growing every year. Rainbow Six Siege keeps getting bigger. CS:GO keeps getting bigger, and so it's tough to sell a violent video game when usually when universities say that they're concerned about something, they've usually already made their mind up on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the best thing you can do is just show them the numbers and tell them how that will affect the bottom line,
Mm-hmm.
and that may sway some members of the decision-making board that you're talking to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So here's the other thing, and that we talked about last time, and I want to bring up again with fresh eyes, is think about not just about how the university cares about it, but why they care about it. So a university and a high school are pretty different. This was actually asked by a high school teacher. So in terms of high schools, I really think that what they should be doing, and universities, is they should be polling their population of kids who are actually participating in esports and how many of them would like to see or is that's a game breaker for them whether or not CS:GO or Rainbow Six Siege is part of the main competitive games that the school offers. And then out of those kids, especially at the high school level, start talking, getting them to talk to their parents and get them to write in to the superintendent about that or the principal or whoever you're beholden to, because parents' voices matter more than anything in high school. And then for college specifically, a large grouped student voice matters a lot more than anything else. So those two things are going to be crucial to being able to bring this together if it's something that's really important to your organization that you need to sell this.
So recap: high school parents win over the parents. College student voice. Rally.
Mm-hmm.
Rally and riot. No,
Rally.
don't riot.
Rally.
But
yeah,
rally.
No, riot with guns. That'll show them.
That'll prove our points that violent video games don't make people violent.
Yep, absolutely. Here's another one, and I think that this is something that I'm dealing with right now, and I'd like to talk about, is finding academic data supporting the efficacy of esports for academic and social purposes. Koji, have you ever seen any data that says gaming is good for kids?
Someone did work on it, and I was following them because they did an interview on NPR, and I followed them on Twitter. I forget who it is. It's some old lady, but she's well respected within academia. I will find who she is because she did an interview for the Texas NPR show. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, I can't remember off the top.
Yeah, I don't know. It's if you listen to NPR, there's a Texas show, the Texas Standard. Thank you,
There you go.
Texas Standard. She was on the Texas Standard talking about collegiate esports and academic esports, and she did quite a bit of research on it. I actually haven't gone through all of it myself because there's a lot of it, and I'm really freaking busy. But I will go back and find that, and I will share that with everyone.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. So, one of the things that I've found in terms of the efficacy of esports for academic and social purposes is that the most research I've found is actually not based in the US, which ends up making it a lot harder of a sell to more conservative university administrators, which is more of a political issue. But what you'll find is specifically working in the high school and collegiate space is that politics matter more than anything to these administrators. And they matter more than money. They matter more than time off or anything else. Credibility. That as long as you're on the top in terms of politics, you're doing well for yourself. So when it comes down to that, making sure that you have academic data that's relevant and also from the US is going to be crucial. I think one of the things that we should start doing is starting to build up the questions that can be asked by okay, let me fall back with this. Start basically creating dissertations for PhDs to study. So I'm actually talking with 2 PhDs tomorrow who already do games and esports research about getting some data and studies out specifically targeting whether or not esports is beneficial to students in a academic / social setting, and what the outcomes are for students who participate in esports on university campuses. That's something that's really near and dear to my heart because, I help build these specifically to help people. So making sure that they are actually helping people is pretty crucial to me, and I know a lot of other people in this space. I'm really interested to see the woman's article that you were talking about, Koji. I'll make sure to read through it, and if it's in document share, maybe post a summary or some notes from it. But one of the most crucial things that you can talk about is instead of academic data directly supporting the efficacy of esports, I generally go a more roundabout loop, which is that a lot of students that are in esports organizations, that's either the first or the only student life initiative that they took part in on campus. Which, if you take that into account, students who are not in any student life initiatives on campus are much more likely to drop out, which is why schools, if you ever wonder why schools spend so much money on student life initiatives, it's not just so that people have fun while they're there. It's really because that experience grows them as people and also makes it more bearable to be able to pay tuition next year. Because getting them enrolled is only one piece of that puzzle. They're not worth any money to you if they drop out. So it also really hurts their statistics to have someone drop out. So it's crucial from that standpoint to actually have something in place for students who would normally be participating in esports, because the general stereotype of those students fits the stereotype for general at-risk students anyway. So it becomes a match made in heaven for these universities to be putting up esports programs in high schools to be putting up esports programs, because it really kind of taps on a underrepresented market in student life. There you go. Koji just sent it. Should high schools offer esports?
Also, the second link is the website that she actually writes for. The author, the reporter that was during the interview for the Texas Center is Goldie Blumenstick, and she writes for the American Higher. I'm sorry, the Chronicle of Higher Education.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I see a couple of articles by her here.
Yeah, and they're actually based out of Washington, D.C.
Wow. I should go and reach out to them then.
Yeah.
Another thing to know is that there is a group called Esports for Education. So I'm going to create a permanent invite permanent invite link in the document share chat. So that you can go to this Discord if you're interested in more of the academic esports side, where you're actually working with academia. So
awesome. So who was curious about the esports or academic research behind esports?
That was Nick Clark. I believe he's the coach at Arlington Heights High School in Fort Worth.
Arlington Heights, oh man. SHS grad over here.
Yeah, he actually, I worked with him a while back to work with Fort Worth to get Fort Worth ISD on the block to start offering esports, and he took up the torch to build it, which was super amicable, and he's doing a great job over there. So
good stuff. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna give you another chance, people. If you have any other questions that you would like answered, feel free to ask them now. I'm looking through our topic suggestion box for another fun one here. Alrighty, so the next one that I love is something that I consistently got pushed back on as it being impossible when I was running a student group, and it turned out they were not completely right, but pretty right. It's setting up for and mentoring successors for your position, especially in an academic esports scenario where you're a student-based group. Koji, what is your theory behind setting up for mentoring successors for your position in a student group?
So in the business world, we call this a longevity plan. And so you actually deal a lot with this at a much higher rate within the military. So I'm very familiar with this type of mindset. It's that when you are the leader of an organization or a team, you should always be replacing, or you should always be training your replacement at any given time. Somebody should be beneath you, whether that be 1, 2, or your entire staff. You should be training and mentoring them to the degree where, should anything happen to you, whether you move on or you get canned, one of those people can step up at any given time. So how do you do that, right? So whenever you make a decision, so think back on any of the points where you have to make a decision for a group. Now, do you involve that group in that decision, or do you just decide? And how do you involve those people in that decision? So a lot of people say, "Oh yeah, I try to get them involved, but they're just not interested." And so that may be true for some people, but I know for the most part, when somebody joins an organization, it's because they believe in that organization at some point. And people only start losing interest when they no longer identify with the group. Usually because they feel they have no agency within the group. And Christian, you've talked about agency, correct?
Yeah, I could give an entire hour seminar on agency.
Right. So what is agency, right? It's getting people to make decisions, or showing that they can make decisions and that their input has weight, um, in the final decisions of the group. And so, to be more contemporary, with an example here, recently, um, we had to migrate our Discord server, for the UTA League of Legends team back into the home, Discord server of the UTA Esports organization. Um, you know, at first we were totally against that, because the way that they were explaining it to us at first just didn't make any sense. They wanted it sounded like they wanted us to, um, manage
Submit.
their community,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, which we were like, no, we're a competitive organization. We don't do that community building crap. And so we're player development focused, not community development focused. That's what you guys do, right? And so, and then finally it came down to, okay, so, um, it came down to the point of where, all right, look, we can either separate from UTA Esports and be our own thing and be UTA League of Legends, whatever, you know, we're more than capable of doing that, or we can just go back to the old server and just continue to operate like nothing happened, and we're always part of the server. And I instead of just making that decision for the entire group, I involved everybody. I had Alethea reach out to each individual player one by one. I know that was a big task for Alethea, and I feel bad about it, looking back on it.
How many
But
people is that, Koji?
so we have 3 teams, and each team has about 6 players, so that's 18 people at least. So, and I told her, ask all the players, and if we get one person that says no, they don't want to separate from UTA Esports, then then we're not going to move. We're not going to separate. We're just going to go back to the home server. And we got that one person to say no, and okay, no problem. And then and the reason being why I wanted, or why I only needed one person to say no, is because all it takes is one dissenting voice, right? Or one dissenting feeling. Because when you have a team, all it takes is one person to doubt what you're about, for everyone else to start doubting too. And that's a disease that some organizations are capable of combating, and that's just something that we weren't ready to face, because we're just a 20 plus organization within a larger organization. So it didn't make sense to just separate like that and have to deal with the fallout. And so and I involve the players and the staff behind UTA League of Legends all the time in large decisions like that, and then we always explain why we made that decision. And sometimes people agree, and sometimes people, but most of the time people do, because they had their input, and we weighed the pros and cons in front of them rather than speaking behind closed doors. So if you are, where was I going with this, Christian?
I'll rein you back in.
Yeah,
So,
go ahead. Yeah.
So the idea is, you need to be constantly looking at mentoring your successors, which
Right,
is
so
where we've gotten back to.
Okay, so yeah. So involve your people in every decision that you make. Whether, no matter how small you think it is, because it means a lot to them.
Yeah, and to make our presentation into 2 or 3 minutes, agency is one of the most important things that you can do, especially with people that are going to be working on your team, whether that team is like truly like a League of Legends team, or it's your management team or your social media team or whatever, and it's someone that's volunteering for you, just helping out. You want to make sure that your people have agency over their actions. I'm going to add a little bit on to onto Koji's definition of agency. Agency is not only allowing your people to know that they have the ability to affect change within the organization, but also giving them the spotlight for when they do affect change and making sure that they have ownership of that change. Because when someone actually feels like they have ownership of part of the organization, they will fight for it until the end. They will do so much more than they would have because now it's part theirs, right? They've taken ownership themselves of the projects that they're coming and putting forward. And especially if you can get someone who's passionate about something that needs to be done within your organization, and really wants to push that forward, that's your best case scenario, because all you need to do is give them the resources and give them the connections they need to make something possible, and they're going to do everything else for you, because that's what their prerogative is, because now they have a reason to work. They have something to be going for, because now they know they've seen others be able to affect change within the organization and get the credit for it. Now they know that they can get that too, and it's part theirs. So when you're talking about bringing in and mentoring successors, what you want is you want to start finding those people who are making the organization theirs before they're the chief or before they're in your position. You want to give opportunities for people to do that all the time. And you want to give them tastes of that all the time as a leader, because the people who get a taste of it and are going to be a good leader later on are going to start getting hungry for it and wanting more and wanting more, and they'll show themselves. It takes a lot of the effort out of finding a successor. Um, Here's the thing, though. Sometimes things fall apart anyway. Fun fact, I trained 4 successors, 4 people who were equally as qualified as each other for my presidential position when I left, and they all ended up not being eligible for it by the bylaws of the organization because of grades or hours or other pieces here and there. And that ended up
Life happens.
yeah, exactly, life happens. So in the end, sometimes you might not get the perfect successor. You might not get someone who knows it completely. That does not mean that with the person who ends up taking the position, or that you end up finding to take the position, that does not mean to leave them on their own to struggle and figure it out, right? You're still partially responsible to help them pick up the ropes, because you were there once too. And if you give them a little bit of taste of that agency at the start and push them into the right direction, I'm sure they're going to do fine. So that's my personal look at mentoring successors. The other thing is, it's not just involving them in what you're doing. It's also letting them off on their own once in a while.
Yeah, and to segue into that, is sometimes they may come up with ideas better than your own that conflict with your original idea, right? And you may push back initially, but you have to, as the more experienced one, you have to take a step back and look at the bigger picture and go and really consider, is this actually a better idea than what I had originally planned? And then you have to be able to admit that you were wrong, and your mentee was actually had the better idea at this point. And the ability to publicly say that you were wrong and someone had the better idea will win you over a lot more people than someone who's always right all the time.
Yeah, because no one's
So
ever right all the time, right, Koji?
exactly. So it's something that Steve Snow from he's the lead at R&D at Riot Games. He said to me that you should always marry the goal, but don't marry the plan. Does that make sense to you guys? So stay focused on the goal. Don't and be flexible in the plan to get to the goal.
Yeah, that's actually, let's take that to another thing that was asked for multiple times and had multiple okay hands attached to it was team conflict resolution and how to determine effective team leaders. For team conflict resolution, a lot of the conflict that should be occurring will be beneficial for your organization. You want people combating ideas. You do not want people combating each other. Like you want ideas combating ideas ideally. The way that you get away from that and start having drama within your organization and getting it, factionized, and you have people fighting each other for, top spots and things like that, is by starting to push back on ideas without transparency. Because if someone thinks that they're not being taken seriously and that their ideas are just being thrown out because, now they feel like you're not fighting their ideas. They feel like it's personal. And to some extent, at that point, it is personal. At least to them, it's personal. And that's more than enough for it to start causing problems. So there are two different types of team conflict resolution: proactive conflict resolution and reactive. A lot of what people talk about is reactive, but what we're talking about right now is proactive team conflict resolution. And what Koji was talking about is absolutely right. Here's the thing. Sometimes you might work with your team and they might come up with an idea that you think is a bad idea, right? Because the lens of your vision pushing forward is going to be different in the end from other people. They have other experiences to weigh things against. The thing is what you need to do as a leader is be able to maybe not exactly look through that lens, but look through a similar lens and try to see where their point is coming from. And sometimes people, especially in esports programs, are really bad at articulating their ideas, right? So maybe give them a chance to re-articulate it, or like draw it out or give an example, things like that. Because a lot of times the idea ends up being a good idea, or even like we had talked about earlier, a better idea. But because there was that communication barrier, you weren't able to see that, and you can cause a lot of unnecessary conflict resolution, or unnecessary conflict, that's going to be a lot harder to resolve later on, if you don't actually take things like that into account. So, reactive conflict resolution is a lot less fun.
Yeah, but also necessary to have in your toolkit.
Absolutely. Koji, I'm gonna give you the spotlight for reactive conflict resolution.
Oh boy, so how do you deal with shit hitting the fan? Right? It could just be a little shit or it could be a lot of shit. So let's talk about a little shit hitting the fan. You have a player on the team, let's say a girl, who is getting a lot of just aggressive or just microaggression from the boys, right? They keep making fun of her for being an e-girl, or that she'd always play support or whatever because she's a girl. And what the situation could have been that things were amicable at first. um, oh god, Alethea meeting right in the middle of what I'm saying. anyways, the okay, but anyways, so the girl feels like she's being attacked all of a sudden when she used to be friends with these guys, and so, and this is actually a true story, believe it or not. And so, I suggested, hey, do they even know that they're being, like really mean to you? Like, do they actually understand how you're feeling from what they say? Because, to put it bluntly, boys are stupid when they talk to girls. I mean, boys are stupid when they talk to each other. So, so you can't expect much when they talk to girls. And when they talk to each other, they're used to insulting each other just for fun, and sometimes it blows up negatively. Some guys take it more personal than others, but that's a human reaction, and that's okay to have a human reaction, right? When someone talks shit to you, you get this little pain in your chest going, whoa, where'd that come from? And then somebody goes, haha, just kidding. You feel a little sense of relief, but that still kind of hurt, right? Like, if we're being honest. And so the advice that I gave this girl is that, just, approach these guys directly. Ask them, do they know how they're making her feel? Like, because you have to put it bluntly, when somebody hurts you in this way, because they may not even be aware of what they're doing. Most likely it isn't. Most likely they're not. There's a old saying that, you should always rely on someone's incompetence, um, because they may not know that that they're being stupid, instead of believing in their malevolence, as in they're actually trying to be mean to you, or they're actually trying to do bad things, or to harm you. So, to put it in a different way, people are dumb. Always trust that they're just being dumb, and not, um, you know, doing things to purposely hurt you. So, going into that, uh, when things do blow up, um, you may need some mediation. And so, um, in the student setting, mediation between students needs to be handled by some form of authority. Now, that authority needs to be a neutral third party who has no stake in your relationships between your friends or anything like that. And that can be some type of educator, a counselor. Counselors are usually trained for this sort of thing. Um, and or in the case of school clubs, your advisor. Then this is also where it helps to have multiple advisors for your organization, and not just one, just in case their availability doesn't match the time that you need their counsel. And so, getting arbitration for a deep-seated or long-standing conflict within your organization is actually fairly standard practice, and it is a best practice for many organizations professionally. So if you have, let's say, a president who is just not doing his job and he needs to be impeached, you need to involve a third party, which is usually your advisor. And so, when it comes to something like that, get that third party involved, get that authority involved, and have a nice, long, and detailed talk with them, and be prepared to have a lot of meetings. But it also helps to have your ducks in a row too, so that your point of view gets illustrated correctly, because it's easy to get things muddled up if you don't have everything in order the first time around, and you may not get your point across, and which can lead to more problems down the line.
Make sure you know the rules that you put in the bylaws. And if you don't and you haven't had this issue yet, make sure to read up on them. And if you see anything that may be a little dodgy, maybe start rewriting them.
Yep. Usually, when I was a student organization president, I usually had my entire um, executive staff, whatever you want to call yours, review the Constitution. Mm-hmm. So we always went over it, and we always, like every semester, we always added to it, because something new would happen each year, and we'd go from there.
Yep, it's good to have that be a living document over time. So here I've written out some of the tenets that we've been talking about on the whiteboard. So for proactive conflict resolution, stop and look at the behavior that spurred the conflict, or that will be spurring, that could potentially spur the conflict. In arguments of ideology, make sure that all parties are clear with the ideas that are being presented, and do not promote a culture of hierarchy, but rather a culture of the best idea winning overall. For reactive conflict resolution, you want to take all parties' points of view on the conflict first and create a full picture of the incident with the points of view regarded, preferably with the team. After that, you want to have a mutual third party without any stake in the game, present the full picture and explain the situation and where the fault may lie. And four, which we didn't talk about, but have appropriate and reasonable, or appropriate reasonable punishment to those in need of it. Number four is really important. If not public execution. Number four is really important. If you're not actually punishing the people who are in the wrong when they do require punishment, people will start to feel indignant about the issue not actually being addressed, even though it was. So, with that in mind, it is 10 p.m., so thank you all so much for coming by the stream today. I'll make sure to put the VOD up on YouTube later. But yeah, thank you for watching. If you would like to hang out and talk afterward with the group, you can join the Discord. I was supposed to throw an instant invite in the stream chat earlier, but I'll do it right now. There it is. If you want to pop in by for an after talk. But yeah, thank you all so much. Is there anything that you would like to say to the people? Any things that you'd like to promote, Koji?
Absolutely not.
Great. Thank you so much. You have a good one.
Bye, guys.